the Group Chat, a show on the two-way platform where the ethos is peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace for all. We are truly going to be tested in this today on some of our topics, which I know we all feel very, very strongly about. We're very excited, and we're so excited to have you all here with us. If you are joining on the two-way platform, of course, you can join the conversation by raising your digital hand, and we hope many of you will join us in this conversation so that we're not just left to our own devices.
Don't make us talk to each other.
And we are so thrilled and grateful to two-way that we are back in studio, in person with each other in our happy place. All right, so our first topic, it's a very serious topic, a very hard thing to talk about in a diverse, ideologically diverse setting, but we're going to do it because that is what this platform is all about. So we're going to talk about the story that really consumed the news media this week, Gaza starving. So this week, images started to emerge which seemed to show children starving in Gaza. It resulted in a massive outcry against Israel, and some Western countries, France, the UK, and Canada, are now planning to recognize a Palestinian state. The Israelis deny that there is either a policy of starvation or any actual starvation happening in Gaza, but President Trump began the week by saying that he believed people are starving in Gaza. So let's have that SOT 7C. Do we have that? Okay.
I'm like, does my thing not work?
Do
you guys hear anything?
No.
She sees the same pictures that you see.
Chelsea, we don't have the audio, so we won't be able to hear
I think
the
everybody, unless they're pretty cold-hearted or worse than that, nuts. There's nothing you can say other than it's terrible when you see the kids. And those are kids, whether they talk starvation or not, those are kids that are starving. They are starving. And you see the mothers, they love them so much, and there's just nothing they seem to be able to do. They got to get them food, and we're going to get them food.
So this was portrayed by the media as Trump breaking from Netanyahu, breaking from Israel. But when the president was asked if he supports efforts to recognize a Palestinian state at this point, he was very clear. He said no. That's SOT 7.
Is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp.
And then he posted this to Truth Social. This is element 6. The fastest way to end the humanitarian crises in Gaza is for Hamas to surrender and release the hostages. So this, of course, is the pro-Israel line, the Israeli line. Okay, complicating things even more. The New York Times published a widely circulated photo which showed a child with his spine showing through, and he sort of became the poster child for this horrific starvation that is allegedly happening in Gaza. But then the Times issued a correction, you can see here on the left-hand side, admitting that the child had a severe illness, which they left out of the story, and which could have accounted for the way that he looked. They also cut the photos, and he had a brother who they cut out of these photos who did not seem to be starving. And so this led a lot of people in the pro-Israel camp to feel that the media's coverage had been very jaded and one-sided and was really leading a kind of conversation around this that they felt was not accurate. Okay, on the political front, some Republicans are breaking with Israel. Marjorie Taylor Greene put out a lengthy statement in which she said, "Yesterday I spoke to a Christian pastor from Gaza. There are children starving, and Christians have been killed and injured, as well as many innocent people. If you are an American Christian, this should be absolutely unacceptable to you." She then became the first Republican member of Congress this week to call Israel's war in Gaza a genocide, which is the way that the progressive left has been referring to it, and which has been objected to by Israel and the pro-Israel camp. But despite reports of what's being called a rupture on the right over Israel, let's pull up element 4. A new Gallup poll found that 71% of Republicans still approve of Israel's military actions in Gaza. And meanwhile, most Democrats in the Senate yesterday voted against sending offensive weapons to Israel this week. So we have the sort of foreign policy angle, we have the media angle, and we have the political angle. And then just finally, one last thing, which is there was an unprecedented development. Arab and Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey, signed a declaration condemning Hamas's terrorist attack on October 7th for the first time and calling on Hamas to release all the hostages, disarm, and end its rule over Gaza. Okay, so there's a lot to discuss here, but before we get into it, I was hoping that in the spirit of peace, love, and understanding and presumption of grace for all, we could just level set here and see if we can't start out the conversation with just some like basic agreements. So do we all agree that Hamas are terrorists and murderers who target both Palestinian and Jewish civilians, and that it would really be a gift to the world if they were eliminated and certainly removed from whatever role they're playing in Gaza? Is that something we all agree on?
I agree with that.
Yes.
Yes.
Hamas is the government of the Palestinian people.
In Gaza.
I mean, in Gaza. So that's why it's kind of hard. I mean, there was a point in time where Netanyahu uplifted Hamas, too. He wanted Hamas to be there. So I'm just giving those fine points. Any terrorist government, you know, wherever they are, we in the world should be concerned. But it's just those little nuances that Netanyahu propped up Hamas when it was to his political benefit, or the right-wing government of Israel. And number two, Hamas is the government of Gaza.
Yeah, they have a political arm.
Have a political
Yes,
arm.
yes.
So that's my
Okay,
only.
that's
my only.
yes, factual clarification.
I don't want
Thank you,
people
Nina.
to think that I'm not. You know, I'm not supporting a terrorist government. I just got to put that nuance out there.
Okay,
That's all.
perfect. Can we all agree that intentionally starving children is a war crime and is unjustifiable?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And can we all agree that nobody on this panel supports Hamas or supports intentionally starving children?
I do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Okay, now
Are they going to drag us out of the seats? We didn't say.
Meeting adjourned.
I mean, I guess to kick it off, the complicating factor, of course, is like it would also be great if Kim Jong-un was not the leader of North Korea, or Xi Jinping was not the leader of China, or Vladimir Putin wasn't the leader. Like, these are bad people who oppress their citizens. Would be better off with them out of power. What steps are we willing to take? At what cost are we willing to bear to have that outcome? And for those people I just named, there's really not any reasonable cost on it. We're not going to have World War III over it. We're not going to do direct conflict. In the case of Israel's conflict with Hamas, I think them certainly bearing some cost and very unfortunately innocent people dying in the process of removing a terrorist group, that's what was going to happen. But we're now to a point where there is so much suffering, and while I am totally on board to nitpick the New York Times and mainstream media for using photos dishonestly, and I know in the past in this conflict there have been photos that I see them and then you go, well, actually that's from the Syrian civil war years ago. So I'm on board with that, but I've also seen videos of people sticking out pots as like soup is ladled into them. It's unsanitary in addition to everything else. I have to think the disease issues have to be astonishing in addition to the starvation. So for me, the cost is now too great for like a continued root out Hamas to the every last. I mean, Israel now largely can exercise control of the area because so much of Hamas has been decimated that I think it's time. It's at least long past time for the U.S. to not be directly aiding Israel. That would be that level at least.
What I so appreciate about your initial comment on my framing is that you picked up on exactly what I was trying to do, which is to suggest that it's not that there's like a pro-Israel side and an anti-Israel side, even on this panel, which represents the full breadth of opinion in America. Rather, there's a continuum to your appetite for the military goals, which I think we've pretty much agreed, like there was a legitimate goal in terms of Israel protecting itself. The question is, has it gone too far, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the thing is we don't really know what Israel's real game plan is. Like they've said to wipe out Hamas. It kind of reminds me of George W. Bush to wipe out evil, right? I mean, that was kind of like, okay, what does that realistically look like? Look, I'm sympathetic to both sides. I mean, we started off by saying children starving, women starving is really tough to stomach. And Donald Trump, I think no one will accuse him of being a pacifist. Even he was like, hey, we're going to do something about it. The flip side is Hamas's history is they put military bunkers under hospitals and schools. They put weapons in areas that they know that if you come and target, there will likely be innocents killed, and therefore they'll try to rally the world. The Israelis say, look, there is some food there. It's not being handed out. I don't know, right, if that is true or not. I'm sympathetic to Israel that they are on a front foot. They are dealing with problems that have bedeviled them now throughout their history, and they're close, I believe, to kind of finishing the job. The question is, I think they need to define that, both to continue U.S. support and to not have the entire world turn against them. But you can't have images of starving children.
Emma.
Well, so I think that's exactly, I think you inadvertently kind of made the point that I was just about to make, which is Hamas, the U.S. has walked away from negotiations with Hamas just like yesterday because they're saying that they're negotiating in bad faith. And Hamas's MO, and it always has been this way, is that they will sacrifice, there is no limit to the sacrifices of their own people that they will make in order to achieve their PR goals, i.e. harm Israel's support around the world. They understand, which is a fact, that Israel can't be a pariah state, obviously, as no country can. So they have no limit to the amount of harm that they'll try to inflict in order to achieve that goal of isolating Israel.
Inflict on their own people.
Yes. So that said, I think Hamas has a big role to play here, which is intentional. They are jerking around the United States. They're jerking around Israel. They're changing their terms. They're obviously refusing to release innocent hostages that they've taken that have been sitting in a cave for 2 years, because I think this is a goal for them, is to make the world repulsed by Israel. When this is the Hamas policy, Israel has said, first and foremost, that they're good beginning when the hostages get released. I think that Israel has changed their position slightly from we have to, obliterate Hamas and their presence in Gaza to, can we just have the hostages back and start there? And Hamas sees that, and so they're holding that line because in the process they are humiliating Israel on the world stage, and Israel has no way to deal with it.
Nina.
The moral part of this is we have the luxury to sit here, and other people in this country have the luxury to parse this out. Over 1 million people over there don't have that luxury because they are starving. And to me, when we say women and children, as if we lift women and children up differently, all the people, the men too. I have a son, so I wouldn't want my son starving to death either. I think it's ridiculous to think that people are going to have more sympathy. We would expect people to have more sympathy for women and children, but that's not the case. Why do we get to decide who gets to be another country's government? For black people in America, by comparison, terrorized by the United States government, legally terrorized by the United States government, even before this country became the United States, where black children were not given the food and the clothing and the shelter that they deserve historically in this country. So we have a history. We're doing it right now. There's starving children in the United States right now, so I don't think we have any moral ground. What we can do is try to broker the peace. It is not Hamas who is dropping those bombs. We're saying this is a war. This is a one-sided war because the United States of America is not arming Hamas. They don't have the weaponry. And I'm not saying I want them to have it, but this is a one-sided. They are not starving their people. Even let's just for people who believe that this is all Hamas's fault. So now we're going to pour gasoline on the fire and starve people to death and kill people, innocent people. Christian Smalls was just over there. People read articles. He was the only black man on the boat to bring aid to people in Gaza. He was surrounded by 6 IDF officers, and he was the only one beaten. A black man beaten by the IDF.
That's the Amazon Union guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
well, first of all, Hamas does still have weapons. They are still firing rockets on Israel. They are armed by.
But it's an unfair. It's not that. All I'm saying, Batya, is that we have a greater responsibility because we fund Israel to the tune of, over $3 billion every single year. We've given them even more money. We have a responsibility to not allow this to happen. It happened under Biden. It's continuing to happen under Trump. And so I don't know why pictures of babies where you see their skeleton. I mean, what more does it take?
You don't think that Hamas should just release the hostages?
Yeah, all hostages should be released. I'm not even arguing that. But Israel has a right to defend itself. If Gazans have sovereignty, I'm saying, who gets to decide who's a sovereign nation and who doesn't? Absolutely, they should release the hostages. Absolutely, what happened on October 7th was horrific. What's happening in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas, where Palestinians are being attacked there?
Well, I might be the only one who feels, I might be honestly the only one in the whole country who feels this way, but it might just be me, I draw a distinction between Israel buying weapons from us and us just giving them aid. I am totally against just giving them aid. I don't know why, American taxpayer dollars have to just give Israel, which has a lower debt to GDP ratio than we do at a time we are taxed, we have a huge debt. I don't know why we are giving them or anyone else foreign aid. I would cancel all foreign aid.
It's actually
if they want to buy weapons from us, that's a little different.
So
and that I don't have as much of a...
Because we allocate aid, which they then spend on American manufacturing companies, right?
So that's a little. I don't like.
We're subsidizing our own military industrial complex,
and they have universal health.
Well, they can buy what they want. We'll sell it. Don't care about that. Other countries can buy too. I just don't. They don't need a handout from us.
Well, I mean,
Dan,
look, I do want to go back to. We started to aid Israel because their neighbors, a lot of them, have historically wanted to destroy them, and they are a democracy. After World War II, we were invested and remain invested in Israel being a self-sufficient, protected country. We aided attacking Iran because Iran has threatened to wipe Israel off the face of the map, literally.
And the United States.
And the United States. And so our intention orients around that fact. And I think the neighborhood got, October 7th, we had issues in Iraq with Iran arming the people who were harming us. We too would like that neighborhood to be more stable. Mm-hmm. And so I think, what Israel has done in the last few years to take out, with the leadership change in Syria, with what's going on in Iran, the way they've decimated Hamas, I think we support the notion that a lot of these bad groups are on a back foot. The question is, can you wipe them out? I mean, it's the old Godfather adage, right? You keep killing the children because the next generation you fear, but that's not sustainable. So what is the end game for Israel? What is enough?
We're violating our own laws, and I know, Emma Jo, or you want to get the audience in here, but we're violating the Leahy Law, we're violating the Foreign Assistance Act, 620I. I mean, we're violating international and our own laws.
You mean because the president's making decisions that are not...
Because we're not supposed to be giving aid when it is credibly proven that a country that we're giving aid to is not allowing, foodstuffs and other supplies to get into.
Well, they would argue that they're
doesn't
allowing
have that, but
they're allowing a lot of aid. And I want to bring in Haley, who's with us from our community. Hi, Haley. Welcome. Remind everybody where you're calling us from and what is on your mind.
Hi, everybody. Love you guys. From New York. Full disclosure, Israeli American, lived half my life in Israel, half my life here. I just wanted to basically kind of just say I think there's a lot that could be said after what was just said, but base my thoughts on what I think a lot of the secular community in Israel is thinking, and that's how I'm thinking these days. And I think that we're missing the nuance that basically two things can be true at the same time. And because we live in such extreme days that one thing has to be true and the other doesn't. And Hamas is stealing aid. I mean, that they're using every advantage that they can to have leverage over Israel and to have leverage over the Palestinian people. And they're doing everything possible to get and steal as much aid as possible. And that decisions that were recently made by the Israeli government did decrease the amount of aid that entered the Gaza Strip, and And I think that comes to a greater point that I think most secular Israelis feel, is that this war, while the war in Lebanon and Hezbollah and the war with Iran were waged absolutely with no fault and perfectly almost, this war is waged with an amount of incompetence that we haven't seen in the entire history of Israel. And that's where I think a lot of the frustration is with the more left-leaning Israelis, where on the one hand, we're having to defend our country and the things that they do against a massive information war. But on the other hand, we are also having to battle with these decisions that we necessarily as Israelis don't agree with. And it's just I think the double standard for a lot of us here who live in this country is that we, like I said, are trying to fight for the just war that we think was being waged versus Hamas, rather than the incompetence that we feel that the government is doing and making horrible decisions that impact both Israeli civilians and Palestinian civilians. So I feel like my community is just in a very, very strange and horrible place at this time. And I don't know what you guys have to say to any of that.
That is such a good point that I'm so glad you brought up, because like Americans sit around and pontificate and scream at each other about the Middle East, and it so often does not reflect the sentiment of the majority of the people actually living there. And that is like a great example where Israelis don't have some sort of hardened hatred for Palestinian people. And obviously, I mean, they live among them, but even in this war, I don't think Israelis are sitting around rooting for the death and starvation and suffering of Palestinian people. They have a serious problem with Hamas, and as the way you put it, you called it a just war, which it is, and I think that the Israeli public agrees with that. But in terms of, like the secular Israelis aren't like rooting for suffering, and I think that there is tremendous frustration with the amount of time that this war is taking. And I know that in the Jewish community in the United States too, like, many people in the let's say more right-wing Jewish community, and when I say that I mean like not Reformed Jews, but let's say like a conservative rightward, want to support Bibi, but they're also like, this has kind of been a while, and what's going on right now? And this is a very small piece of land where they have a ton of reconnaissance and intelligence on it, and who's who, and I don't think anybody is trying to defend that.
So I just want to add a little bit to what you said, Haley. I think you made such incredible points about Hamas stealing aid. Some report came out that was widely reported in the news that they were not stealing aid. I've seen it. I've seen the bodies of tortured to death Palestinians who Hamas tortured for trying to get aid that was for them. Not only do they steal the aid, but even the aid that is not stolen by them, the situation that happened that you described, where Israel stopped sending aid in because of domestic politics, that happened. At the time that happened, there still was a lot of aid in the Gaza Strip. But what would happen is that there would be crushes, masses of people trying to get the aid. And so it would often be young men who were able to walk the miles and miles to the distribution centers, which were much fewer in number. They would get as much as they could, and then they would sell it on the marketplace. And of course, all of the taxes would go to Hamas. And so they were literally raising money off of the aid, which is why I think so many Israelis felt like we are literally subsidizing our enemy. I mean, there's like a real pain there. And the intricacies that you alluded to of being in this position of having to defend a war when you yourself know that you don't trust the government to wage it justly on your behalf. It's just such an incredible, incredible point, and very poignant the way that you phrased it. Thank you so much, Haley. I want to talk a little bit about the political angle here domestically. So let's talk about this. Can we play SOT 7D? Now, this is from a focus group that Charlie Kirk did with young conservatives. So this is young Republicans who have very nuanced views on Israel, it turns out. So let's play that SOT 7D.
Play a word association test. What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear Israel?
Judaism.
Aid.
Netanyahu.
Tax dollars.
Liability.
Sacred.
Tax dollars.
Conflict.
Complex.
Controversial.
Scary.
Strategic.
At what point are you going to be okay, or would you never be okay with the U.S. defending Israel's right to exist and, essentially saving the country?
I think they absolutely, first and foremost, they have a right to exist. They have a right to defend themselves. That's not the my issue with it. I can kind of give an analogy is that our house is burning down and so is our neighbors, and we're trying to put their fire out before we put ours out.
Do you guys see Jew hate increasing amongst your generation?
I think that there's a lot of collusion between criticism and hate. I think that there is legitimate hate out there, but a lot of criticism is being framed as hatred, or you don't support this because you're criticizing it. And that's I think that that's a little inseparable from what the left
do you guys
does.
think it's anti-Semitic to say you don't like Bibi Netanyahu?
No.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so Robby, this I thought was so interesting. It really speaks to what you were talking to. So Charlie said that 75% of those young people who you heard having such critical views of Israel would call themselves pro-Israel. But what they are against is us funding it. They feel that, aid to Israel has run its course. It's enough already. We have our own problems, America first. And also that there are these new kind of woke speech codes suddenly being used to silence criticism of Israel, right? That this is kind of being imported onto the right, and it's all turning them off of Israel when they themselves would naturally be pro-Israel. What do you think?
Yeah, I never make the claim that what I think is actually popular or widespread ever. But this is one
You would be very upset if it was popular, right? You'd be
I
like,
liked,
"I'm doing
I liked it
something wrong."
before it was cool,
Yes.
type thing. But if you listen to them, they are actually saying, which is basically my view of the conflict, that yes, I support Israel. Of course they have the right to exist. Of course they should retaliate against a terrorist group. But why is it our responsibility to give them aid, to always agree with everything their government does? We don't agree with everything Starmer or Macron or Trudeau or anyone. These are our friends and allies, but we have disagreements with them. And also that, you hear the keywords they're using, controversial, aid, handout, that kind of thing. And then we exercise no discipline increasingly over what the Israel government does. Trump wants a different direction a couple times. So this is where the right is. This is where the young right is. It's the view those people expressed. And then very quickly on the speech codes aspect of this, this is a real thing. I was just reviewing on the train ride to the studio here in New York, I was reviewing Brown University's settlement with the Trump administration on the anti-Semitism front. A lot of the stuff in the settlement is stuff I agree with in terms of, not doing race-based hiring. But there is this provision where they're going to have to do a campus-wide survey on how uncomfortable you are. Has anyone harassed you on social media? That is going to be a pretext for the same kind of safe space-esque speech policing all conservatives were against in the 2010s.
So Nina, how are young people on the left similar to or different from those young people that we saw in that focus group?
I think they might find some commonality there on this issue right now. It is unfortunate that when people speak about a government or a leader of a government, to have everything conflated as anti-Semitism is wrong. Judaism is not a government. Judaism does not have a military. And so to say that somebody can criticize Netanyahu, his leaders, a lot of those leaders, including Netanyahu, have said there are no innocent Palestinians. Saying words like that. When you have leaders saying that kind of stuff and you got that kind of firepower, we have to question that. So directly to your question, I think there would be some similarities among younger people on the progressive left.
So Dan, I want us to look at, can we bring up element 3B? In terms of what Nina just said, there's this big question now for the Democratic Party, right? The Democratic Party is very, very suspicious of Israel right now. Majority of Democratic voters, grassroots, not fans of Israel. We had this vote in the Senate. And so it really is posing this big question in terms of thinking about the future leaders of the Democratic Party. Do they go in the anti-Israel direction? Do they cling to the old version of the party that was pro-Israel? You have someone like Zoran Mamdani, who has defended, globalized the Intifada, which most Jews hear as a call to violence. Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, very interestingly this week, let's pull this up, element 3B, he came out and said that Zoran Mamdani left open far too much space for extremists to either use his words or for him to not condemn the words of extremists that said some blatantly anti-Semitic things. He's sort of planting a flag in the ground here, isn't he? Walk us through what you think the significance of this was.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because Mamdani, since he got the nomination, has made these kind of offerings or tried to meet with the Jewish community, try to assure people that he didn't quite, that some of the stuff that he said was being interpreted the wrong way. We had somebody on Two Way Tonight last night who works with a lot of young progressive influencers who said there's rumblings on the left of what is he doing reaching out to the Jewish community and kind of trying to assure people that he doesn't really stand by this. I agree with you. Shapiro does seem to be planting his flag. I think it's one of the reasons Kamala didn't choose him ultimately, because she didn't want this headache. I think the majority of the party is actually still pro-Israel, but there's a very vocal, loud minority, and it may be 40%. That disagrees on that. And I think what's interesting is if the Republican Party starts to split, it gives some room on our side because you'll say, hey, look, J.D. Vance, what are you going to do here if the young energy in your party is to kind of perhaps stop funding? Look, I think this is still going to bedevil the party. I think you have, if people are thinking of running for president, they're going to look at, again, places like Michigan and say, hey, 4% of the population is Arab. There was an issue in the primary of the, whatever it was, uncommitted. Yeah, uncommitted, people who sat out, people who voted for Trump. So I think, look, the best thing you can do is be clear. You need to be true to yourself. You need to say what you think. You need to not try to make everybody happy. And I think too often the politicians are finger in the wind, and that's where they get in trouble because they look like phonies who are afraid.
Yeah, there was, who's that redhead from, is she from Michigan? Mallory something?
Yeah, who's running for the Senate.
Yes.
Yeah, who had the famous stuff on abortion and stuff.
So last night she had put out a video on Twitter of her talking about this issue, and it just felt so like McKinsey focus group.
Yeah.
Like it was like so obvious, like she had memorized the thing she was supposed to say, and it felt so inauthentic. Peter, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody where you're calling us from and tell us what's on your mind.
Hello, I am calling in for the last time from Northern California. Starting next week, I will be moving down to Southern California to start law school, which will probably make it more difficult to come more regularly on here. No. My schedule will probably be a lot more full, but we'll see what I can do. I am trying to. I strive for excellence, Emma.
Okay.
No, I have a lot of really complicated feelings about this issue personally because I was raised Jewish. My mother's Reformed Jewish. I've been to Israel and had an amazing time many years ago. I'm also a convert to Orthodox Christianity, and I've gotten to know a lot of Palestinian Orthodox Christians. There's a lot of them here in Northern California. And I think there's a couple of things in terms of the trends that people are talking about in terms of the politics, where I think that the folks that Charlie is talking to those people in the focus group, and it's very interesting. And I think it dovetails with a trend that he actually alluded to on when he was on Tucker Carlson recently, which is where he talked about these young men. There's increasingly numbers of young men who are returning to the sort of older, you could say, more traditional forms of Christianity, whether it be Orthodoxy like myself or Roman Catholicism. And those groups do not ascribe to the, Ted Cruz dispensationalist theology. That doesn't mean they're inherently hostile to Israel necessarily, but they don't have the sort of automatic tendency to be reflexively pro-Israel the way you see in many evangelical groups. But I think even for more evangelical people, Mike Huckabee went to the Taibeh village in the West Bank where the settlers had gone in and attacked, and he was rather frustrated a couple of weeks ago with the Israeli Interior Ministry for things they were doing with visas and stuff like that for Christian groups. So, and I think that that's a big factor as well in, I would say, the frustration of people on the right, who I don't think are inherently like pro-Hamas or anything like that, not by any means, and I'm not either. Hamas is terrible, but I think that what's going on is tragic and can't be denied that it's terrible, and that there have been things like that, or like the Catholic Church in Gaza. There was the St. Porphyrios Orthodox Church there was hit last year. So I think people see these things and are reacting to those. And as far as the Democrats are concerned, I really do think that Josh Shapiro, because of this issue specifically, is DOA in the 2028 primaries. There's not going to Rahm Emanuel too, by the way. Like those guys,
You mean because
there's no
they're
way
Jewish?
back. Because they're pro-Israel, not because they're Jewish by ethnicity, but because they have a history of being vocally pro-Israel in their stances.
Do you think they're more
that
pro-Israel than like Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg?
I think that whatever past positions, Gavin is a very my governor is a very slippery man. I think that he hasn't. I think it's easier for him to pivot, or for Pete Buttigieg to pivot, than those guys.
Because they're not Jewish.
Not necessarily. I mean, I would say Bernie Sanders has what he thinks about these things. I do think that there's increasingly a divorce going on between liberal diaspora Jews and I think liberal diaspora Jews are becoming increasingly skeptical of the current iterations, the year 2025 of the Israeli project. I think Ezra Klein had a podcast about this that came out today.
He wrote a piece about it, but Peter, he's wrong on the polling. I mean, the polling actually shows that after October 7th, there's been a real intensification of Jewish sentiment, even among diasporic Jews who are not practicing, a real identification with Israel. Emma, do you want to respond to anything Peter said? Such interesting points, Peter. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this is actually something that's been kind of coming in and out of my mind for some months, where I'm just seeing that Israel is not taking care of their PR. Yeah. And because, first of all, it's not the case that this is a one-sided relationship at all. There is a reason for this alliance, and it has to do with U.S. national interest first and foremost. Israel is not just a charity box that we're all walking by and putting our nickel in from our taxes in. Israel does tremendous service to the United States, to intelligence, to the military, to tech, to investment. There is so much addition that Israel brings to American life and the American economy and our military, and not to mention our interest in the region, which Israel represents. None of that is being spoken about ever. A second point that I would make, which I'm very curious to see how this goes, but I don't think it's as dire, but Trump is not an isolationist. Robby has this perspective, and I think Robby's perspective is one that's shared by a lot of people in Robby's kind of cohort, young men on the right. This is what we saw with Charlie Kirk's focus group. But that doesn't reflect MAGA or Trump foreign policy. Trump is not against giving foreign aid, and Trump definitely doesn't see the situation as our house is burning and our neighbor's house is burning and we're pouring water on our neighbor's house. In certain instances, yes. Trump obviously is the first person to call out excesses in American foreign aid and our giving. There's stuff that's obviously wasteful. Trump does not think Israel is part of that category. And he does not think that a number of countries are part of that category and our engagement with a whole variety of them. The communication on what exactly the nature of our alliance is with Israel is really lacking. Obviously, I guess that would be Israel's responsibility to communicate, although I think that the people in the United States who are proponents of that alliance should also kind of speak to the concerns that progressives are having. and that MAGA is having, which are totally legitimate if you don't have that information. You're like, why are we doing this?
Well, as we put a cap on the, we got to move on to Harris, but I will just say,
do we really?
Poor Dan.
Underestimate Trump's understanding of his base at your own peril. I think we have seen this again and again over the last 6 months, whether it be Iran or Epstein or Israel. Trump gets his base. So if you see him coming out and you see, it doesn't matter how many podcasters are saying, where's my Epstein list? If Trump says this is not a big deal to the base, Trump is right. All right, moving on. Next topic. Kamala Harris.
Unburdened.
The most enthusiasm.
I am so excited because I think she's running again. Kamala Harris today announced Element 8, she will not be running for governor of California. And at the same time, she also announced a new book. Let's take a moment and have the pleasure of welcoming Miss Harris back into our lives, Element 9.
Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. 107 days, traveling the country, fighting for our future. The shortest presidential campaign in modern history. It was intense, high stakes, and deeply personal for me and for so many of you. Since leaving office, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on those days, talking with my team, my family, my friends, and pulling my thoughts together. In essence, writing a journal that is this book, 107 days.
She's gonna rub all 7 of her brain cells together to express her
and
thoughts.
then Dan, reaction.
Well, first off, I said on Monday on the morning meeting that someone with her had told me that she was thinking pretty seriously about wanting to run for president again.
So good.
Look, I think she has huge problems. I'll just state the obvious. I think the 2 biggest challenges for her is people who have run 3 times tend to have been ideologically consistent in each run. And the country has kind of come to them, like Ronald Reagan, even Donald Trump, right? When Trump left office in 21, he was not very popular. By about the summer of 22, you started seeing in focus groups, people liked his economy, people liked his, talking about immigration. For Kamala Harris, it starts with, she has been a moderate, she's been a conservative, and she's been super progressive. And in 24, she kind of tried to be all things to all people. So it's hard to run this many times when you're constantly changing who you are, because I don't really think she knows who she is. The other 800-pound gorilla in the room is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is unpopular today. The party is reckoning with his mental acuity, reckoning with his policies. You even had Neera Tanden in the New York Times saying, oops, we kind of got it wrong on the border and should have done something. So is she going to now say, you know what, I'm going to separate myself from him? Meanwhile, he's going to start to have a book tour pretty soon.
No.
Hunter Biden is not going to allow any separation.
Oh, no.
And so I don't see where the groundswell is for her. I don't see her future. But it is my understanding she really wants to look at running for president again.
Oh,
Nina,
with that, the ball's on the tee.
What do you think is there advice you would give her, or where are you on this?
Don't try this at home. You know what I mean? But seriously, if she wants to run again, she has a right. I mean, Biden ran 3 times. He finally got it. Maybe she'll wait. She'll wait a few years and decide when she's 75 to get on in there and do it. Because the 70-year-olds and the 80-year-olds are, hey, baby, they making it happen. So I would just wait. She should just live her life and then just come back. Come back 20 years, 30 years from now and try it. No, absolutely. I mean, she has every right to do it. I just believe that anybody, especially on the Democratic side, that is serious about being a 2028 contender for president can't be on sabbatical. You can't sit it out. Mm-hmm. It is what are you doing right now in 2025 to help change the material conditions and the dynamics on the ground for people right now, especially when you got that kind of cachet. She was the vice president. She has a lot that she could be doing with that right now besides announcing a book tour. God bless her Write the book. So I don't want anybody to get this. I want her to, she wrote the book. She out there going to sell the book. It is a beautiful thing. But you cannot then just jump into 2028. What is your plan to do something differently? So my advice, truly my advice would be, let's go and wait another 25 years. And then come on out.
I mean, this would require the Democratic Party, and I'm sorry, Nina, because I know that this gets under your skin more than anyone, and it honestly equally gets under mine. Like, I feel for you. I feel with you that this is viewing the Democratic Party nomination once again as a coronation.
You better say it. It was in my notes.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to be the VP and then lose my election, but then I'm going to pen a memoir, and then I'm going to be the nominee again. And it's
She raised more money than President Donald J. Trump did. She had every
3 times more. She outspent him 3 to 1.
So just kind of like the nerve. The Democratic Party writ large, not the faithful, the so-called leaders have learned absolutely nothing. But does she have a right, like anybody else, to consider it? Yeah.
I feel like we're underrating her chances. I think she'd be the front runner for the nomination.
No, I don't.
Hear me out. I mean, look, it's a name recognition
People are not
game.
going to be scared to
It is a name recognition game. You go back to 2020, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders destroyed everyone else, and Joe Biden eventually won because he was the best known. He was the vice president, former vice president, and Bernie Sanders was the runner-up from last time. They had the highest name recognition, and they beat everybody else up. Kamala Harris would. There's not another. I mean, it depends who else runs, but she would. She's not guaranteed to get it, but she would, to my mind, be easily the most likely.
This will be a replay of 2024.
Oh, see, I disagree with you guys for this reason. Go back to 2020. She didn't even make it to Labor Day. Why?
Oh, that's true.
Because she couldn't answer basic questions. She had that great first debate.
She was an unknown senator then. Now she is the former vice president.
But she wasn't going to win her state either, Dan.
Yeah. Oh, and
she was not going to win California.
You guys are overestimating how much people are paying attention to politics just in general. That's the name they know, and
Robbie,
that's going to help her.
No.
Having like
I was in the streets, Robbie. I just left South Carolina. People are talking about this right now, and they are not talking about a repeat of any of these folks. This is what the people on the streets are saying.
Okay, we got to bring it up.
You do have to remember in 2019, she had the great first debate where she sandbagged Biden on the busing issue.
I was that little girl.
Right, and
by
Biden
my
was on his
T-shirt.
back foot.
Which, by the way, wasn't
surge.
By my T-shirt.
And then the next debate, she couldn't answer the Medicaid for all question.
Wait, I have to
it didn't matter. It's just that Joe Biden's name.
Say, like, look at the smiles on mine and Emma Jo's faces.
And we're mashing our hands over
I got my flashlight on. I'm so excited. I'm so upset. My flashlight.
Let's bring in ML Shaw. ML, you there? Hi, ML. How's it going?
Go.
Good. Yep. No, now my mic works. So sorry. Yeah.
Great
real
to
quick.
see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Love the show. Please don't ever stop doing the thing. It's awesome. Love to see you guys in the studio. It's a different vibe, as the kids say. I have a kind of a two-part question. One would be Joe Biden he had his book deal announced, and this is kind of a little bit more silly one. Who do we think? Does the panel think that she made more money or less money than Joe Biden for doing her memoir? And then the follow-up to that question, which I think Nina touched on, this really serious question is, what theoretical issue could Kamala wrap herself around and then just hammer that for the next 2.5 years to get herself into shape to like where, if she were to come on stage, people think, for example, abortion, that's the defender, the advocate for that thing, just as an example.
Great questions, ML. All right, who thinks Kamala Harris got more money than Joe Biden? I'll go with that. No?
And I think to get 10 million, Biden has said, I'm going to address, I'm going to name names.
Right, she would never do that in hers.
She
right,
wouldn't.
okay. Let's go around. Everybody picking. I'm going to go first. The issue I think that she should pick is housing. I think that if she could come up with a good housing plan, which is very easy, it's just basically deregulate. You like that?
I do like that.
I think if she really came out strong on housing, I think that could be her issue. What do you think, Nina?
I'm with you. I would add, of course, you guys are not going to be surprised, universal health care. She signed up for it as a senator because she saw the handwriting on the wall in terms of its popularity.
Yep.
That's why she was so easily switched from it. But I think, between housing and universal health care would be great.
I'm actually going to join Nina and say I'm not sure if it'll be universal, but I think something in healthcare, it hasn't been on the radar much. I think the Medicaid stuff is going to bring it back here. I think, as you say, own it, right? You kind of went there in 2020, and no one's talking about it right now. Be the first.
Yeah, a public option, like some kind of like moderate, smart, like, like something that addresses what a lot of people like need, is means tested. Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. Robby.
I can't even. She doesn't need an issue. She's the former vice president. She's the best known person. And all else being equal, that will carry her to the nomination. There's no issue she could. It doesn't matter.
That shallow.
Emma, what's her issue?
Yeah, I'm like, does she even have like the faculties to like figure out one issue? Like, I don't know. I mean, and honestly, like, I'm not like, this is, God forbid, it has nothing to do with anything other than her as an individual. She literally had an interview with Dana Bash that was like, it felt like when I'm sitting on the floor with my daughter, like passing her a piece of a toy to fit into the hole that it goes into. Plus Tim Walz was sitting right next to her the whole time like a minder, and she couldn't get it out.
But we all think she is running, right?
Yes.
We all think she's running. All right.
I think she wants to run.
She might be convinced.
I do think if she travels, look, one of the things I'll be curious about is what candidates ask her to come to their state. I don't think Roy Cooper's going to ask her to come. I don't think in Michigan they're going to ask her to come. So how humiliating
Especially
is
in
that?
Michigan.
Yeah.
I think she has the faculties, Emma Jo, I could tell you as a candidate and somebody who's certain, if you listen to your advisors too much and they giving you, I just think she was just stuck in this loop. I mean, for every question she was, I grew up middle class.
Yeah.
Every question.
For real though,
she
it
was
felt
just
like
stuck
that.
in this
The
loop.
consultant.
Because she's cautious.
She
She's
couldn't
so
get out
cautious.
because no authenticity. And like we were saying, pick something and own
Well,
it.
and she had terrible advisors at this point.
But hold on, Dan just said she's too cautious. How does she choose an issue? In order to choose an issue, you must stake out a position on the issue.
But it is true that wasn't. I can't believe I'm like defending Kamala Harris. This was in
Bobby's
this
on the payroll.
campaign in 2024. It was not her fault that she had terrible advisors. She had Joe Biden's advisors, and there was not two.
She did not.
time.
David Plouffe is not a bad.
She's a grown adult.
She did not
have to
No. She had people. The fundamental thing she had to do to win that election was throw Joe Biden under the bus, and the advisors to her were his advisors who were never going to do that. That was not her fault.
Robby, I mean,
She didn't have to accept those advisors.
But there was 100 days before the election.
Can I just ask one question? How are we talking about a presidential candidate like she's a child? Like, oh no, but her advisors are bad, so she couldn't say it. It's like,
no, I'm not saying
this is an adult.
No, Nina's not justified. Yeah. Well, as the godfather of 2A, Mark Halperin always says that Kamala Harris's biggest liability as a political candidate is she doesn't have the one skill you absolutely need, which is making tough decisions. I think
that's right.
Speaking of a tough decision she'll have, if she runs, who does she pick as her VP? Dan.
Oh God.
Not Tim Walz.
No.
Who?
No.
I said not Tim Walz.
You don't want him.
No Tims.
No
forgettable Tims. What is with the Democratic Party?
If I were her,
Who would you tell her to pick?
Yeah, Jared Polis.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, I like him. But...
He's her opposite. He's young. He's blunt. He's super substantive. He's unafraid. Yep.
Nina. Obviously, she should pick you, but
yes,
you would never do it, right?
Yeah, really, oh, Hicks, no. Oh, no. I would
but if asked, you would...
I would overshadow her.
That'd be the point.
I'm telling you, I can't win it because I just feel as though she has to put anybody, not just her, who wants to be the Democratic nominee has to put some skin in the game.
Yep.
Right now, we're jumping way to 2028. Yep. We could have a replay of 2024. So.
Would Ro Khanna say yes if she asked him?
I'm not sure if my dear friend would. Maybe.
They're both from California.
Oh, that's
She'd have to relocate to New York City or something.
I love Ro Khanna. I love Jared Polis. But Josh Shapiro is governor of the must-win state.
Right.
So it's a foregone conclusion that there is no other.
Catch-22.
Progressives are not rocking with him
because
at all.
It's like she's going to take Pennsylvania at the cost of Michigan.
Why would?
First of all, she got to figure out who she is and what she stands for before she.
I don't know if that's the
thing. It's like you have to be able to make a call. You have to be able to think through the issues. You have to be able to choose an issue that you want to, stake your career on. You have to be able to, like she.
Emma Jo,
I don't
that's
think
why
this
I'm
is
saying
going anywhere.
She needs the time. She needs 20 years or so. She needs it. She needs that
She
time.
does. Yeah, I agree. She needs 20 years.
70-year-olds and 80-year-olds, they dominating,
You're
baby.
right.
I mean,
Well, let's come back to the first topic. I imagine the two of you would disagree on what the Democrats need to do vis-a-vis Israel in 2028 in order to succeed. Am I right that, Dan, you think... What? Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nina.
No, I'm just saying, why are we centering everything around
2028. Oh, Israel.
We got to center things around what people in New York need or Cleveland, Ohio.
Would you advise a candidate to just say, like, you know what, like, that's not my number one issue. I want to talk about...
I want to talk about East Palestine, Ohio. I want to talk about Cleveland, Ohio. I want to talk about Chicago. For the love of God. One of the reasons why I lost my congressional run is because groups like AIPAC and DMFI came in, and it's way before October 7th, colleagues.
Right.
And made Israel a center point because I was running for Congress. Even though I served in the Ohio Senate and had a very large Jewish population and never had a problem until I said equal rights, safety, and security for both people, and that was blasphemy as far as they were concerned.
Dan.
I agree with Nina that I think focusing on kind of, how do you say this, America first, is definitely the smart thing. I don't think, though, that you can avoid this issue. I think, one, we don't know where the issue will be in 2 years. I mean, this could go very sideways. J.D. Vance could be the one who's in a vice because, you know, MAGA is revolting against.
But then would you call it avoiding it as much as centering the needs of... No candidate can avoid. I wouldn't.
Well,
call it,
I think
is it avoid or just centering?
I think to your point, you're going to try to come back to, you know, the real lives of real people here in the United States. I do think you're going to have to address it. Look, I know if Dan Turrentine were running, where I would be, I go back to, you have to be true to yourself.
Amen.
You have to you have to have reasons for why you see it that way. It has to be part of your core. It has to be part of your background. It has to be consistent with your message, and you have to defend it. And I think where Kamala Harris and Joe Biden got in trouble was they didn't want to talk about this. They just wanted it to go away. And Trump, being smart, was like, oh, no, I'm going to make sure it doesn't go away. So I don't, you know, I wouldn't tell someone where they should be. I personally would be, you know, pro-Israel today, but I respect someone if they own it.
But can we agree, just because people challenge the Israeli government doesn't make them anti-Israel?
Oh, none of us would. Yeah, no.
Why we
none of us would.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think anyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm very critical of the Israeli. I pretty much think, like, I mean, I'm okay with what's happening in Gaza in terms of I think it's a just war, but there's very little that
I think where the
West
party,
Bank
look,
that I think
I'll
is
say this.
justifiable. So
I think where the Democratic Party gets in trouble is when they start getting sympathetic for terrorist actions.
Yeah.
That is where the party has historically
When
gotten.
were Democrats, well
Well,
we're running out of
sometimes, yeah,
time.
so
I mean,
sometimes
I'm
when-
sympathetic towards
Sometimes
terrorism?
people have been sympathetic, just like we had some people when the United Healthcare CEO was killed who said, well, you know, healthcare premiums are really high and healthcare companies are terrible, so I'm not that upset that he was killed.
When people say globalize the Intifada, like Intifadas were terrorist movements in Palestinian
But doesn't
society.
that word mean something different for Palestine? You're asking people like Mandani to get into the heads of people who say these words. It is my understanding that that term means something different.
But they were historical events that involved terrorism.
But the literal definition and what it means to individual communities, I don't think somebody like Mandami or any other leader should be forced to get into the head of somebody else.
But he started walking it back.
But Nina, if you...
Yeah, well, because he felt the pressure to walk it back.
But Nina, if you said to me, like this phrase, when you say it, I
Did he
hear...
say it?
No, I know, I'm just saying. If you said to me, when I hear this phrase, it makes me feel like people are calling for violence against blacks, I would say no one should use it. Like I would, you know
would
what I
say,
mean?
I understand where you're coming from and I got it. Okay, I don't know, but that Mandani it's my understanding that he's being blamed for a term or asked to get in other people's heads.
He justified its use. Anyway,
Yeah.
we don't have to litigate that.
Yeah.
All right, great chat. Everybody's still friends. We did it. Thank you all so much for joining us for this. And we'll see you next week at 4 p.m. in studio for another group chat. Thanks so much,
It's really tequila in there. Yeah.